All right.
Live streaming is on.
All right. So we're gonna have a working session, and this working session is based on the framework document that we decided on earlier that we'd flesh out. The framework document focuses on three major areas of concern with that we can identify gaps in with regards to the COVID shift, and those gaps can potentially be addressed or bridged through ICTs. So the framework itself outlines and elaborates on the three major areas with sub areas and other points to consider. Those areas, namely, are protecting the vulnerable, adapting to distancing, and data sharing and accessibility. And each one of these three major areas has sub areas. So under protecting the vulnerable, we have preserving health, protecting livelihoods, and under adapting and distancing, we have supporting distance education, making e-commerce accessible, facilitating online order and fulfillment, online order fulfillment and delivery. And data sharing and accessibility, we're looking at open APIs, GDPR, multiple access channels, and the like. So this is a more or less informal setting whereby we just have a back and forth in terms of discussing ways in which you can flesh these items out under the framework towards what we call a unified solution or a unified solution domain for the fight, the COVID fight using ICTs. All right, so yeah, let's begin.
Yeah, so I'll more or less start off on protecting the vulnerable. So I fleshed out kind of three areas that we can think about. Um, Preserving health, protecting livelihoods, which we got out of discussion yesterday. And based off of reviewing the video from this morning, I added this third one, impact of social distancing and quarantines. Um, Based on that's basically centered around what are the effects that the pandemic has happened on not only people's livelihood but like their mental health and these different types of issues, and see if we can brainstorm some type of strategies to get towards that. But let's start from the top. So under preserving health, we have two main things that we already have solutions out there for, right? So the first one, the kind of the question I first should add is, this whole focus of testing right now, who to test and when. If you guys are familiar, I think in Guyana we have like around, I think 1,800 test kits that we would have received just thereabout. And today there've been just about a couple hundred tests done. I think it's 600. I don't have the exact figure, but I know it's not more than 1,000, right? And some days we have a spike in terms of you might see that 60 people get tested, but I think yesterday like only 3 people got tested, right? And one big thing that I know is being done over here is they're trying to find the best way that isn't invasive in any way to people's public health, because there's a lot of perceptions of this virus right now floating around. Some people believe it's true, some people don't. Some believe it's not as serious as it is. Some people are more focused on the economics of it, that it's just affecting their livelihood from an economic standpoint rather than truly caring about their health. So um, kind of testing is kind of sitting at the center of that, of how can we have these systems in place whereby we can sort of track people in a light sense of understanding what their health is like, and understanding when should they go to the hospital, when should they not, when should they isolate, how can we monitor individuals in that sense, right? So currently, as Julius was showing in this application earlier, they have a testing system so they have a private one and a public one. So the private one is where people would kind of sign up and have an account and can put in the information, but you can go to the website currently and do like go through a series of questions, and then based on how you would have answered the questions, they would give you some form of diagnosis per se, right? And the good thing I think with his application is that I would hope that that diagnosis that they're given has been decided on by the Ministry of Health, since they have their backing, right, to kind of decide what to tell people. And what we were thinking of is we were looking at the numbers last evening in our discussion, and that you know if despite that they've done 800 tests, self-tests today, so 800 people have taken the time. We don't know if those are like unique people, but 800 times in total, people have went to the site and have done this self-test, right? You know, Now we know much more people are connected online, much more than that, right? And if we're truly to have this tool be as pervasive as it is, we should have an average of people going there regularly just to check up on the system, see what the recommendations are, and such, right? So we try to ask the questions of, okay, why, and I wonder if I could pull up the numbers, Julie, and show them. Like, I think just yesterday only 3 people would have taken the time to do a test. Right? Oh, 5. Like yesterday, 5 people would have taken time to do the test. And there was one day, right, in which 130 people decided to do it. So they had a significant spike. And when we asked Julius, why did that happen? It was because Guyanese critics shared it on his page. Right? What that got me thinking is that, okay, it's an accessibility issue.
Yes.
Right? People don't know about this. It hasn't reached out there. In fact, because if somebody just shares it and they happen to be, a popular figure that gets much more attention and people are taking it, right? I think if we focus now on, okay, this is a tool, it's critical, right? Because when these tests are recorded, they're sent to the Ministry of Health officials, and they're then, they have the chance to then follow up on it in some form of sense, right? Especially if the person decides to, after taking the test, to divulge their information. So kind of what they do is that if it's like really, the symptoms that the person's described is really bad, they would advise them to, sign up for the account so that you can actually be actively monitored, or at least provide us with some information so that we can reach out to you and, have that dialogue there in that sense, right? So, I don't know about this up to this day. Granted, I'm not in Guyana currently, but from what I gathered, the other people in our discussions didn't really know about this facility, right? So, the first question we're saying, so if we have this tool of doing this form of self-testing, how do we make these tools more accessible, right? And crafting kind of the campaign around that. So one of my suggestions was, we have Iris, which when we built it out was specifically driven to be as accessible as possible by having these multiple channels. And we have a competency within that allows people to talk to the agent and do some form of self-diagnostics, right? So if Julius's application is already, his tests that people do are already being sent to Ministry of Health officials, right? I think one thing we can do to kind of assist in their penetration is, hey, we can do tests through our interface in a much more, user-friendly manner. If persons don't want to necessarily go to a website and then fill in all of the information on that form, we can present it in a conversational format whereby it's much more condensed, right? Asking the key questions. And then, once the persons would have, sorry, once the persons would have, been identified as being a potential risk, then, we can just hit their API, send them, hey, here's a test case. A person answered these questions and these were the results. Put this on your radar as well, right? So we can have them be kind of the central point in terms of that testing data storage, right? And think about different ways that we can put it on. So we can have it on the Iris application. I think we should have it on Diopal's website as well, right? So we need to have multiple forms of, access points,
Right.
and we can figure out a way in which we can help Julius's team get this out here, get this, much more backed, right? And I'm not sure if the task force even knows about this. Right? And I think it's a case whereby the Ministry of Health is probably still overwhelmed and they're not really, thinking about, let's save ourselves by truly utilizing the technology.
Yeah, and that's where we come in. I mean, it's a domain specific thing, and as much as they have good intentions, unless you're in the domain, you wouldn't know the extent to which you can, capitalize on the implements within that domain. That's why we're having this conversation among technologists, because again, it's a necessary conversation to help out the agencies and so forth in their fight. So I think that's a very significant observation, Chris. The services exist, but you've identified that there are gaps when it comes to just accessing the services for the general population. We have strengths in terms of will you call them access points? The combined solutions that we have across many of the participants here. They serve as access points, and you brought up Diapal's website as well. And Diapal has a very interesting strategy, and he's consistent with it, and he uses social media to promote bite sizes of information on a daily basis, probably multiple times a day, to his social media feed, which drive traffic to the site that he built. So, well, I think a combined effort in terms of not just developing the services, but having a promotion strategy, an information dissemination strategy alongside those services will be critical.
Yeah, definitely. And what I was thinking, we could even take it a bit further. I know STEM Guyana has their mobile app. We can probably think to leverage that as well. But if we have like a simple mobile app, right, that users can download, right, and they get a notification every day on these are the latest updates, and
Right.
if you're feeling, or like a steady check-in, right? I think we have to take somewhat of a more aggressive approach and try to, let people know, hey, we're trying to help. So imagine person wakes up in the morning, they get a notification, hey, have you checked? Hey, how are you feeling? What are your symptoms like today? Feel free to inform us, right? And then we check that information is then sent back. I know there's definitely going to be that privacy concern. There are a whole lot of things we deal with in Guyana. People might not necessarily trust this person, get their information, particularly government or whatever in a sense. But I think if we think deeply about the messaging and the way in which we're just trying to help, right, and portray that in a good manner, and just try to make sure that we're only capturing truly essential information, I think we can have some good penetration, right?
Yeah. So building on that idea with the mobile app, let me see if I can just. Yeah, the idea with the mobile app is a good one. What popped into my head when you mentioned that is something along the lines of a COVID assistant. So that COVID assistant sits on your device and it provides just about everything you need to navigate the new COVID lifestyle that you're living. From information updates to even explore other means to access additional services that will be helpful, such as STEM Guyana's crisis app in terms of connecting you with products and individuals who may have products and services to deliver. Just something to simplify living the new COVID lifestyle. And then, of course, you can use the app as a channel to push information to the user, reminders, updates, things like that. So it's hard to simplify as it can possibly simplify the consumption of this information, the access to the information for the regular consumer.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking about, I'm surprised we didn't like necessarily think about it early when we were having like our internal powwows. But like, just now I look at my phone, my app. Well, this is a completely different application. But I just got a notification about like a final exam. I'm not really even thinking about that, but it's something to cue you to go check it out, right? You know, like some persons, you have to be on Facebook and you have to be following the ministry's page to then know, these are the updated cases for the day. But if you just get a ping, or they sign up, they don't even have to sign up, right? You just get a ping, hey, these are the updates, right? Kind of like the news, right? It's gonna pop up, glance in some way. So I think the more channels we have, the deeper the penetration can be, and we can get more information and drive some of these tools out there.
Right. Yeah, no, most definitely. And, ideally we want the endorsement of the government, but I mean, we know that,
Yeah.
I mean, Julius would have shared some difficulties with regards to how swift they respond and the uptake. But
It's May 2nd, man. You've been in a pandemic for a while.
well, I think it may be just the opportunity for us to explore a civil society initiative that's purely driven by civil society.
Yeah.
And it just takes some marketing for this particular thing. Like as you pointed out, the Guyanese critic just shared a link, and
it was a huge spike.
spike.
Like that.
Right. So there are means in which we can, once we have it in place, and once we can identify that this is the way to go, we can use the various news outlets, those journalists and those pseudo journalists to promote the tool, to just get it to the population, right?
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. So I think this is again, the conversation is an amazing thing. I hadn't started out the Hacksolve expecting the organic flow, but it seems as though with every single new conversation that we have, looking at the issues, we're closer to a solution.
Yeah.
So let me hear from the rest of you guys. What do you think? This seems to be a new development with regards to simplifying information access and providing, let's say, a general portal that can embody the framework that we have in the form of this mobile app, this COVID-19 assistant that citizens are advised to download to navigate the COVID lifestyle in our country. What do you think about that?
Well, hey, Alan and everyone.
Hey, Rand.
I like it, but I have two minds. You have like the angel on the left shoulder, and you have the devil on the right shoulder. So I can just make it quick. 2 points on each. On the positive side, it does indeed improve penetration. If you keep putting something in someone's face over and over, is the more likely that it will get into their minds and their subconscious minds, and they will pay attention to it. So I do like that fact of penetration, but towards that, it can become an annoyance. So the negative side is saying, like if you're playing a game and these ads that come up, you have to watch a video for 30 seconds or 15 seconds before you can play the next level. It creates like a annoyance where like you just disable the game, you'll like delete the app. So it's about how do you gracefully create compliance. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. I would like to see how we handle it. So I just looked at it both sides. And the second part is where we were discussing. You told me about the open data platform. So I looked at that. Well, you mentioned protocol, but there's ODP, Open Data Platform, is where these vendors came together and they are sharing data across the multiple applications. But I think that again you said that the solution I provide is specialized. And I do believe that we need to have some kind of specialization in our solution, a little customization. It says like what technologies are we using, like on the back end, on the infrastructure side. Are we using Apache? Are we going to use .NET? And then we need to look at what do we need to have in place for these systems to talk to each other. So basically, we need the APIs, the programming language interfaces to talk to each other, and we need to centralize that data because The challenge is if you have that single data across multiple platforms, it's redundancy. You're repeating the same thing. So in order to synergize our efforts, you know, we can really focus on centralizing the database. And that's where I see it as a positive in the sense that it's centralized, it's easy to update the information and to get the latest information there. And then on the other side, it's hard to integrate multiple things. So I just want to leave those 2 points from uh, from my side.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ryan. I think the first point definitely is relevant, and it's a UX consideration. So if we make the wrong choices in designing the user experience for that app, we will undermine the
Yeah,
entire
I think,
effectiveness of the app.
like just a daily hit, right? You at the end of the day, you get, hey, these are the numbers that
Yeah,
is
but you have
like.
you can't assume. I think you should take a scientific approach.
Well, it
See
is.
what
Yeah,
works
UX is
in the
founded
sense,
on a lot of
you
research.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we can test it if it's weekly updates or if it's daily updates, however, or fortnightly updates, however people we see respond better to that.
Of
You know.
course, and that's all part of the process as well. So we release, we don't presume. We
Eh,
release,
Well, I'm glad you're taking that approach.
we
That's
release.
like that's an Instagram approach right there. You create multiple things of the same thing, but then you test it strategically against the different users, and then you see
Exactly.
which one is. So I'm really glad you're doing that. That's
Yeah, of
a
course.
major
In
way to
Of
overcome.
course. Of course.
in the
You know,
application, sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
in the application though, I think we could probably put the option that the user could set when they would like to really receive the updates also.
Yeah,
Right,
give them the control.
right, right. Give them that access. Yeah, and in terms of the second point you made with the open data. So the reason why I was suggesting open data, and the reason why I was saying that the
Is
solution that you provided is specialized, is that in our case it doesn't seem as though, or at least given what we're after, we want to share data openly, and it seems as though the solution that you presented required, or at least the scenario required, an added level of security with
Yeah,
regard
because that's like financial data and health data. Like there's a lot of
to
compliance in the maritime
right,
industry. So I was just given the model, but I understand that we need to adapt it to open data.
right.
I totally understand. It
So
was
yeah,
just to get the ball rolling.
that's generally what I had in mind in terms of the type of data that we'll be exchanging, which would be open data, which would allow persons to just pull it freely.
But my point was that how will you prevent redundancy? Because it's like multiple systems. Are you focusing towards centralizing, or are you just focusing
Oh
towards
well,
sharing data?
a
Ellen?
simple way to prevent redundancy, and I know Agri may have some ideas, but a simple way to prevent redundancy is, again, to start with conversations like these, that's driven by individuals who may have little pieces of the data puzzle together. And if you
Yeah.
understand that person A is already furnishing this type of data, there's no need for you to do the same. You just
Yeah,
tap
I
into
think
person A's data.
our
Yeah.
application
Yeah, this
definitely
this
does.
if the data models are shared,
Yeah.
so we need that kind of so that goes hand in hand with like an agreement or like an
Yes.
understanding between the
Absolutely.
developers. So you should really have something in writing so that people acknowledge what they're doing, so that when they're gonna be doing things, they align their actions to where we're heading.
Right.
Definitely.
So, Ellen, let me just add a little 2 cents here. Um, so, I was listening to the conversation, and what I want to is that we focus on streamlining, as Ellen just mentioned, what one person is doing. So, for example, person A is focusing on this particular data, then we any data that needs to be collected along this particular line, person A will be the collector of it, one, and other persons can be the processor of it, and the data manager of the data could be the one who collects it. Why I'm saying all of this? This is the principles of GDPR. There's going to be a collector. A collector can be a manager, but a processor may or may not be a collector. So what does that mean? Eldon and his team builds application, and the data can be held and managed by a second person, so they can collect and it pass via an API, etc. So that person who is the data manager or the validator of the data, whether it be the ministry or some third party, but it needs to be an entity and somebody be assigned to that particular role. Because the principles of GDPR speaks to those three duties that are distinctly separated. Yeah. So I just want to put that framework because it's something that we can all kind of reference. It's basically the GDPR framework, and we can look at the model in Canada and the one in the US, which is more
Well,
or
I
less.
think, Agri, you should really post something in the Slack that gives us a fundamental understanding first before you go into like data manager, data owner, because we need everyone on board to really understand how data is going to be shared, and not only understand, collectively collaborate and agree to using this model. So I really appreciate if you would, let's say, break it down a little bit more, and then let us start the conversation in that area, in that thread. So I would really like to see more on that area.
Okay, sure.
Good. Any other thoughts? All right. So Chris, you were at Preserving Health on the framework, and I think we branched off when you were talking about expanding and improving access to COVID-19 education resources. That segued into a discussion where we realized that we can accomplish quite a bit in producing a specialized COVID assistant app that served as an information portal, and it allows handoffs to the other implementations that were presented earlier today, and any other new implementations that may exist in the future. The idea is to simplify that access for a typical consumer, for all the to all the myriad of bytes of information related to COVID, navigating the COVID lifestyle, as well as services and so forth that may be necessary. So you want to continue, Chris?
Yeah. So I think I covered it in the first parts 1 and 2, expanding resources. So now going on to protecting livelihoods, right?
You want to share your screen? I think it might be better.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
Look at the document here.
I have multiple screens, so I gotta make sure I'm sharing the right thing. No.
Why is that great?
No, because yesterday he had talked for other people. Now
Yeah.
no,
for other people, because you know what you
careful.
can do.
Yeah, careful. Don't share your Facebook messages again.
Yeah. And I was going through the devil yesterday. I was like, oh, shoot, it's a good thing I do. Yeah, so the general question on the protecting livelihoods is, on this topic of how can we ensure that this provision of resources is distributed to those most vulnerable. And so we have, like I've seen, organization after organization, they might do something in their community, or somebody else might do something for a neighbor. So they're generally, I think, in times of crisis, there's this community approach that is spirited out, right? And there are a bunch of people who are interested in helping, fight the cause and helping out with the whole initiative. right? So I think what we need to do is have some form of access point. We would have gotten into this in terms of the applications that we had before, and how do we connect those that are ready to help in whatever way they can, and then how can we connect them to those who are truly in need in
So
that.
this like aid management, you would
Yeah,
say.
sort of in a
So
sense.
Julius presented an app yesterday called CareGY,
Yeah.
Care.gy. Um, and that model seems to fit this question, you know?
Yeah, it fits into this. Now, what I want to necessarily get out of it is for us to have a deep conversation on what is the ideal way to kind of structure it. So the implementation that Julia showed yesterday, a person come on, necessarily fill up a form and make like a resource request, right? And then that would necessarily be forwarded to whoever's interested in helping, right? I think that's a very good starting point. But I want to incorporate a lot of the features that we were having discussions on in terms of how can we collect some more form of information from this to assign a risk factor to a person, right? So based on the
So
person more or less most to, we can say, look, these persons are more at risk, right? And then we can look at ways of even splitting this up by geographical locations and having not necessarily the information on, that's personal to the people, but having information or being able to mine information in terms of communities, so that then we could say to businesses, hey, we have this case whereby community A, there's a large number of requests for these sorts of items, right? What can we do to come together to make some form of donation for this specific community, because it seems that they seem to be more in need, right? And have that be like a public sort of information pool that people can come and see. Like I would find it very helpful if I could go on, view a map of the different communities in Guyana and kind of get an assessment of their risk factor in a sense, right? Which communities seem to
Chris,
be struggling. Can we then take a local government approach and then distribute by communities to then help out in a sense? So I want to take it, much further than, hey, whoever just have access to this form, send them, and then we connect them to whoever wants to provide. Let's think much deeper than that in terms of making it, more systematic in a sense.
If
this
I
is something I
may
was
add,
really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, if I may add, basically what Chris is mentioning are just what, in my opinion, team's opinion, are reports, because we're collecting enough data to provide that information. We're collecting geographic information. We have a number of key information points that are collected on the form, which we can use to assign a score to see, um, you know, how high is the risk of this person really suffering during the pandemic if they don't receive aid. So it really is just a matter of us determining how to present the data. But I think we've got all or most of those bases covered.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know for a fact, I mean, just looking at your social media feed, you see a lot of, at least I see a lot of my friends. Ideally, just as you mentioned, it would be ideal if we can make sure those resources go to the people that need them the most um, during this time.
Yeah,
So you need to
that's
connect
a
the
real
dots.
question there. It's hard. I was really there's a. I'm sorry I had an autocorrect in the thread, but in coacting, there's so many persons that are not afraid to ask, oh, to pay my rent. My husband isn't working, and so how do we basically pre-qualify that data that this person is asking, and then ranking the need. I mean, there needs to be a whole logic there, of
Yeah.
sorting through
So
and
during that,
prioritizing.
I'm not sure how deep you guys necessarily got into your form, and Michael can
That's
also,
a very complex problem.
yeah,
How do you really grade who
mm,
is mostly in need?
yeah, Michael or Dina can speak to this, because one thing we were doing in how we had set up the initial framework was that a person can come register their household, right, and input specific information about a household member. That would include, a question, such as, what would be your gross monthly income? Do you have any existing health complications? Are you employed or are you unemployed? Right? And a person would necessarily fill up all of this information for their family members, right? And then what we would do is that we would systematically generate what we call a risk factor, right? Being that this household is on a scale of 1 to 5, they have this level of risk as a household in total, right? So now when that person now goes to the resource log module that we're building and inputs how much resources that they have, we have predetermined sets of, for a household and for the amount of people that they have, this is how much they would need based off of the information that they put in just to survive, right? And then based on whatever's the next thing that's added to that is based on whatever's the distance they are from that minimum threshold, right? We then also attribute that to the risk factor. So what's your financial standing of your household? What's the medical standing of your household? And what's your current resource provision, right? And then that determines, from for this given household, just how much do we need to put into them. And I wish Dina was here. Michael, you can probably pull it up. What we added to that was this information dashboard so that people who are resource providers could come in and say, it doesn't even have to necessarily be NGOs, right? Let's say I'm, a waterman. I sell water, right? If I have, I know this is something that I can provide and something that I'm interested in, maybe discounting my prices for the help of the community or just giving out in a sense. I can go and see that, okay, based on the resource logs that people would have put in, these are the resources that people are highly requesting, and we can see that, okay, based on given areas that they're not anywhere close to the amount that they should go. So then that person as provider, they can then target to that specific area in a sense, right? So the way I'm kind of thinking about it is that let's have much more deep, comprehensive kind of tooling kind of behind it, whereby we look at we look at much more than just necessarily filling up some form of information in the form and then putting it just to the providers. How can we provide this to be some form of an intelligent system, so that then we could then just make informed decisions? So because we could then see, hey, if these 1,000 people would have taken the time to then put in their information, we can say, hey, the government's task force that they have distribution these packages. Hey, you shouldn't be looking at this area just because you have a hunch that these people are ones who are truly at risk. Based on the data, right? This is what you need to necessarily pay attention to, right? And there might be specific resources that you don't necessarily have access to that is then presented in this portal that you can then look at, how do you partner with these private organizations and get access to that?
Yeah, Chris. An easy way to deal with that is the CDC and WHO have, well, they have a list of risk factors. I think it's supposed to be about 6. And what we can do, and they call it triaging. what we can do is simply just look at those risk factors and put them into our system based on the WHO definition and parameters. Let's say if they have 6 and any other 2 that's unique and localized to Guyana is our system, we add whatever we wanted. So I am saying let's standardize this now, because that's essentially where this conversation is going. One, we get the risk factors for those most at risk from WHO list. It's on their website. I'll have to look back and find it and throw it in the Slack group. And right, so if you could find it, that'll be excellent. And I think the Red Cross has a particular way that they do it too. If we could triage them that way, 2 things that happen. One, when we open up the data now, right, and we use the identifiers based on those internationally agreed on definitions of risk, low, medium, high, or level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1 to 10, or whatever the case is, then the data can now be interoperable with existing systems of international donor organizations. Because most of the money going towards this is from Canada and the US. Let's just be honest. And of course, you'll have what you talking about is your local guy who gives some water, some juice, some toiletries or whatever. But I think we should standardize now so that the data becomes easily understood, not just by local but also international partners. That's my solution to this challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And when I was thinking about it, we shouldn't even have to do this, right? This is what a census is for.
Yeah, I was having the same idea of, I was thinking about
beacons of idealism. Forgetting which society we are part of.
Yeah.
But Agri made a good point.
Then this is just building the algorithm, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, just building the sorting algorithm and prioritizing based on the risk factor, basically.
But one of the biggest hurdles that you're gonna get with that model, Chris, is it relies on a steady influx of data, and the regular Joe may find it very tedious to keep feeding it.
Yeah,
So
especially a person in Guyana household, he's got to do that for what, 4 or 5 people? What's the reward? There's always a reward, right? If you
Okay, elaborate.
No.
I agree.
No,
go ahead.
Your income level is your income level. So if I'm poor in let me tell you how this works. If I'm poor in Trinidad, I'm poor in Kigali, Kenya, or Nairobi, I'm poor. And I'm poor by these agreed on international definitions. If my income is less than, whether it be $5 a particular day, right? And I have 5 people in the house, right? Those are set parameters of what it means to be poor, right?
That's not where you get net agri, but I believe there's some. If I'm
the health part of it, Eldon.
There are other items that are collected that go beyond their income bracket.
Good. No.
Chris could probably shed some light on that.
Yeah, so I think what they're getting on is more so of the willingness to provide the information. I think what Eldon's alluding to, right? I mean, if we have this information just from the stuff that we would have kind of set together as the initial model, I mean, the impact of that would just be tremendous. It's just, are people willing to tell us this is the state of my household?
Well,
Yeah, exposing yourself and especially
there's
in
an
a
easy,
vulnerable way.
right.
It's not exactly a trait of Guyanese, you know.
Right. Okay. There's an easy way to solve this. If the person says and some people can lie. Let's just deal with that. If I say my income is, let's say, $40,000 a month, please put your income and your NIS number.
Well, I was thinking about that, right?
But that makes it difficult.
Let's say I'm not their ID number, or let's say, but then we need to loop into that system, right?
Well, hold. No, Chris. This is, we talking about Guyana here, right? So let's be realistic and not talk about looping into the system. Right?
We're not gonna loop into no system.
No, we're not gonna loop into the system right now. There's a bunch of aggressive thinking people who put in their heads together to move something forward. Let's get the slow.
Yeah, no dependencies to create any holes in the strategy.
Let me hear this.
So here, let me finish. So jumping off from that point, you say your income is, let's say, $50,000 a month. Okay, thank you very much. This is your NIS number. When we put it in the dashboard and somebody, let's say from the COVID task force, Red Cross, US Embassy, Canadian Embassy, say, okay, I see you have this high risk area, let's say in somewhere in Georgetown, right? Okay, give me the list of people. Okay, this data must be coming from the task force. The task force now will be given a report. I think Julius mentioned this, and it will be a list of names in this area that we have deemed to be high risk. The task force now, and they already published stuff that say they're looking at the NIS database, can now take this data from us, right? A report of these 20 people or 200 poorest people in Georgetown, whatever the case is, and they pass it through NIS, pass it through those who people already getting the grants for food for the poor and wherever else, and just confirm that these names are true and say yes, these names are also part of this database that we have access to, which is the government. Here's confirmation to the US government, to Canada, or wherever. These are really our vulnerable people. These are
so I agree. Basically, what you're saying is that we can use our model to identify, but they have to validate.
No, right. So let me finish. Step one in this process, we continue along the path that we are on now. It will present to us a list of high risk. Once that is done, we are simply producing this as we're simply producing this, as a report. This report is coming out of our system, and we're going to continue, whether person's messaging the bot on Facebook, whether person's calling in, whatever the case is, we're collecting this data. And we can now give the task force, NGOs, CDC, whoever, access to reports that we have collected from our system, right? And they can now take this, validate, and deal with. We need to start scoping this and put it to some parameters. Our goal is not necessarily to match people with resources per se, right? And the resources part, we value it, and we present a report to the decision makers. So they have in the left hand, they have a report of these are the resources. These are where they're coming from. This was available. This is the donation, right? These are the companies, X, Y, and Z, company, private sector, local and international. This is what they're giving. So at the level of the task force, at the level of CDC or whatever, you have a report of resources, a report of needs in one system or in two systems, however we choose to decide it. At which point you have a decision to make. You can validate information from either one or two of the reports with whatever data you already have as a government entity. We, as a group of technology people, would have done a great deal of doing a few things: collecting information, putting it in a particular place, and generating actionable reports that they can now make decisions on. And we would have done exactly what we wanted to do as a group.
But that creates quite a dependency there, I agree. We really have to decide as a group if we want to hand over that responsibility to them and if they will be able to do it. So I think we should like have a discussion there. Now, how do others feel about this model? Eldon, Chris?
We can get into the details. I mean, we can pursue this model, but um, I've always found that simplicity trumps all. I mean, in terms of design when it comes to this. So what I mean by that is that a radical alternative to this model that we can pursue that would hopefully simplify it is one that I think Julius's care.gy might embody, whereby if a person needs assistance, they elect to either register or document their current needs and whatnot and make it available to those who can render assistance. Alternatively, there are persons who might know of other persons who need assistance and they can create a help page for them to have them gather the requisite aid and whatnot from the community. So that seems to be a simpler model that we can explore and then we weigh against our current model. So the idea is that we promote, if you're going to push this, we're going to promote the platform to allow persons to apply for aid, to apply for assistance. And on that platform, you promote it to individuals who can render assistance as well. So you get this connection as a service type of model going, whereby it connects people who need aid with people who can render aid. And then
So it's more like you're connecting them and then allowing them. You're not facilitating, right? So this is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. So it's like if you wanna, like GoFundMe, that type of thing. It's like a GoFundMe model if you're creating something on behalf of someone or yourself.
Yeah, it's more about community.
If you need, if you need help, you go on there. It pulls out. It allows you to document all the specifics about your particular case. If you really need help, you're going to disclose the information about your needs, and you make it available, and the public assists you. Simple.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because if you put a dependency on another authority, it creates another, let's say chunk.
Yeah,
it creates another a funnel, and
Yeah, my biggest fear, I agree when I was thinking about that part, right? Is let's say we just have superb penetration and people do take the time to input their stuff, and then they drag their foot with this. Oh, they're gonna drag us through the mud. You collect all this, like I remember just from our survey, we got backlash just from people saying we collecting my information.
Yeah, oh Lord. Oh.
Right?
Yeah, well, you gotta understand, guys, that you have a wide cross section of characters in this world, and you're gonna meet every single version of them. You're going to meet every single version of them on social media, most likely. They're going to be people who have a certain way of looking at the world. I mean, imagine they're questioning whether we got approval to run a survey on social media. I don't know. But we don't need approval to render social good to our fellow citizens. I mean, we certainly needed approval to help other people.
So it actually needs to be actionable. We don't need to add another decision to it. That's what you're saying, and I really support that model. Versus like the CDC and these guys, we will have a space. We can provide a space for them to pull reports, but we shouldn't make the actionable aid based on their decision.
No, I specifically was not saying that. I gave that as an example that if you have two pieces of information, those who can provide and those who need, a decision maker, I use them as one of the examples. The decision maker could be, let's say, a business group. This decision maker could be the US Embassy. The decision maker could be the Canadian Embassy. Decision maker can be the Red Cross. Decision maker can be PAHO. Decision maker, you insert whoever you want there. My point is, if I have money to give, let's say I have $100,000 to give.
So we use a technical term we developed. Let me say contributor from the co-active. Let's say contributor, right?
Right. Who? Okay. Entity A. Entity A, I have $100,000. They come to care.gy and they say, okay, these are the persons on my left who needs, these are the person on my right who are already providing. They say, okay, if they already have water in Guyana, they already have toiletries. What's major lacking in Guyana right now, and this is data that I know firsthand, is certain medications for different diseases that we just can't get because our logistics has been broken up. Okay, I have $20,000. I could pay for a private jet to leave Panama and fly to Guyana with these list of medication because I have $100,000 to give to a particular territory. And no, I'm just saying. So based on the data, stop it. Based on the data provided to me by care.gy, I can make that move, and it would have undergirded our mission, which is helping persons who most in need, right? So having those, being able to generate those two reports as a group, I think it would be effective to anyone who is serious and willing to move now. And I think that's where we are, because there are people who are growing hungry right now. I mean, the last couple of weeks, some hampers were given out by the CDC and whatever. But if I know anybody who have 3-4 children in the house, that food done, you know? And so, and next month is coming, and they can need more food and more food. What happened to the medication? No one I have seen publicly, please correct me, have dealt with persons who are, there's a shortage of certain medication in Guyana. So in collecting the data, some of these communities, they have very elderly people who get the pension, but the pension can't pay for these things. And the person who would have been giving out these things are closed, you know? So how are we dealing with that? So it comes back down to the root point of having the list of needs and having a list of those who are providing. And then once you see a mismatch between needs and those that are being provided, that gap between provision and needs is where an entity, it could be Chris could fly in on a private jet and say, okay, I realize these things are not being met. We are, based on the data provided by K.GUI, let's take action there.
Yeah, man, I can show up next week.
Yeah, I really like Eldon's approach to it. Simplify, deal with it, move next. You know, so that's the best approach.
Yeah, I think a key discussion that probably needs to be had is what is that information we're going to decide on to keenly be collected, and then how does that provider information model work, right? In a very lean approach, it can be, you know, kind of like the GoFundMe kind of where we look at the GoFundMe type of model. You know, you can basically, whoever wants to help, they can find some way necessarily to donate, or they in themselves can necessarily create a page in the sense, right? Or it can be the strategic household, very concise type way of looking at it. So,
well, you know, the drawback with the strategic household type of Ryan, is that you? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, with the whole household strategic type of way of looking at things, again, it carries with it a level of complexity. Although, if we can get through that level of complexity, we'll be able to capitalize on semi-automation and ranking and all those amazing indicators that the thing feeds off of, which is a more precise way of rationing.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, when you look at a crisis like this, we don't have the time to really test and retest and tweak and evaluate. It's about getting solutions quickly and in, you know, to as many persons as possible. So that way, the whole stretch with regards to identifying a gap and then filling that gap, that should be as short as possible. And the only way to get there is to focus on, you know, very basic solutions first, really basic executions, which you can then build upon later on. So hence my suggestion in terms of just keeping it simple. The GoFundMe model may be a way that we can keep it simple. I know there's some persons who are organizing hampers and then giving those hampers out, but it's still based on the presumption that people need those hampers. There could be cases whereby, you know, they might have gotten aid from somewhere else, but no one's going to say, hey, I've got too much help, you can give it to someone else.
Exactly.
No one's going to do that.
Exactly.
So the whole culture of the GoFundMe model is that if you actually have a need, you're going to register your need, and you're going to keep up to date with regards to your contributors and to say, okay, well, you know, thank you, and you know, this is what we need right now to get us through the next stretch of things. So it might just work.
Yeah, I agree, and that's actually the approach that, or the reason behind why it is that simple, because this thing needed to be out there, I'll say, like 3 weeks ago. It's late in the game right now, and we just need to get it out there as urgently as possible, because I think that not saying that the efforts put forward so far have been wasted, but I feel that they could have been better directed to places where there is a greater need, you know. And the thing is that as we're all developers, we know that things can always be extended to incorporate more features and whatnot. But I tell my guys, my philosophy is get the most basic function out, and you can always add on. So
yeah. So Julius, out of curiosity, what delayed the launch? Are you waiting on government?
I was waiting on government. That's actually the thing, because it wasn't supposed to be something public. It was supposed to be built into the current portal that we have, but they're so slow that I just decided, hey, you know what? There are other people out there who are doing volunteer work, distributing aid. Let's help these people. And if the government wants to jump on board, the system is there; they can jump on board.
Well, let's drive it.
I agree 110%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can provide that support in terms of getting it out there.
So Julius, you are at liberty to launch, correct? Would it cause
whenever, as soon as we're ready to go, we're gonna launch it as soon as it's ready.
When you say we, who do you mean? You and the government?
Me and the development team, not the government.
Okay.
No, there's no government involvement in this.
So I want to. Okay, good. We need to act as swiftly as possible. So what I want to do is, I would encourage you to capitalize on the community. Those who are in the realm of this framework area, protecting the vulnerable, just, you know, freely share the application. We can go through it, put our thoughts down. If there's any suggestions that may come up, again, not to make it complex, but to just refine the MVP if necessary. I mean, you know, multiple heads are better than one, or better than a few, and then, you know, we can get it out there as quickly as possible, and then we can weave it into, we can have an overarching marketing campaign that we craft, where we pool our efforts to just promote this particular tool once we release it across the various access points, as we call it, and we move forward that way.
Yeah, both, I think one thing we need suggestions on right now is just what kind of metrics to produce, because you know, as simple as our form is, it actually is collecting a lot of information. So it's just what would be the most useful things to make available. You know, as a way.
Okay.
Some assistance with.
Yeah.
Well, let's see it and we can weigh in.
We already have some ideas for metrics we wanted to produce out of ours. So we
Well,
have,
the good suggestion of Agri is to use the WHO standard, according to their rating, if as close as we can to that to start, and then we can adapt it to, unique in Guyana scenarios.
Well, that is not necessary now, actually, because we are going with a very lean model. We could probably do that, probably a version 2 later down the road. But let's just do a simple matching.
We could use a simple.
Yeah. Let's just do, if I have a need, you can fill it, X, done. So there's no triaging or that kind of thing as yet. However, as we go along the road, we could add those requirements over time, or base. Actually, the WHO stuff is not necessarily needed at the point of capture. It is only needed at the point of reporting, because once you capture the person's basic information, I can run a query to see if the person is really in category 1, 2, 3 afterwards, after the data has been captured. So it's not necessary now at this point in time.
So keep it simple then. Yeah.
Yep, that's the idea, guys. And anything that may offer some amount of complexity or complication that we don't need at this point in time, we just excise it. We keep it out of the equation. Like, unfortunate to say, the government. So we
it's gonna be so funny. Somebody from here watches this.
Hey, listen. It is what it is. It is what it is. Everyone is aware of the culture, and we can't afford to sugarcoat things right now. People are dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that one there.
Yeah. So
honestly, I was so frustrated with this thing that, like, we've literally been kind of like badgering these guys, saying, "Yo, we're working on this thing. Let's go," and nothing is like, wow, that's shocking.
To me, like, that's where we should leverage our community here. Like, to say it's not one person or one team, it's multiple teams across. We ourselves are multicultural. Let me don't go further than saying that, but we ourselves are mixed in a way. So if it comes from a community, it's much more powerful, and that's where we should really leverage that.
Yeah, absolutely. Civil society
and that's why
efforts.
we said we need to bring all the ideas, because we couldn't leverage that before, because we didn't even know people working on this, right? So that's where this starts, and I think that's where also co-opting comes and plays a big place, because if when this started we had co-opting up, Julius could have put it up as an initiative, we would have had overview into it, and we would have reached out and say, hey, you have our full support in terms of driving the horse to drink the water.
Interestingly, when we had launched the health portion of the app, I got a few calls from some persons in authority who said that they were going to start working on something similar. So, since you already have something in production, you can do this add-on, and we'll work out the details later with whichever agency. But that working out the details part just never happened. So we only decided, like, literally 3 days ago to say, all right, let's scrap all of this and make this thing public. Like, literally 3 days ago.
You don't have to, when it comes to Nexus something, we have history with the long run arounds of what it takes to just get done.
Yeah, let's just leave it at that, Chris. We know what you're going through.
Yeah, we
won't say further. But it's something that, again, like I mentioned, it doesn't help the situation at this point in time. And as technologists, we're all about outcome. We're all about results. And again, we have to exercise our civic responsibility at this time, with or without the endorsement or assistance I mean, it was pulling teeth trying to get other agencies involved in this particular HackSolve initiative. So, I mean, I was happy to see some sort of representation initially in terms of registrations from the various agencies, but you know, in terms of these ongoing conversations, we don't have their representation. But hopefully, you know, we can fill them in later on when our solutions go live. Yep.
Yeah, it'll all make sense to them once it's launched. It'll all make sense in that way.
Yep.
So let's just continue this way. Let's try to use our momentums together, our discussions, and to just get something to present, and then from there we can just move forward from there. If we create the dependency early on for them, it's going to create too many holes in our strategy.
Yeah, so I think what would be a good first step, particularly on this model, is if Julius, if you can share to us what the current implementation looks like, what information you guys are providing. I can speak with Dinato also. We can have a kind of a short up meet. We can tell you the information that we were planning on tracking, see what are the MVP requirements, and then we can then work together. Okay, how do we then provide support? You know, if Nexus Hub can help you guys with a whole marketing campaign in terms of getting it out and how we structure it, then we're perfectly in a position to do that. I'm willing to do that. So I think just share with us what you currently have. Let's take a look.
Yeah, well, the most important part of the app is actually the data collection form, and that's already available online. Just go to the URL, click the Get Help button, and you'll see it there. Because the other stuff is more for internal use, and that's still being worked on. But that form is the foundation for everything that comes out of it. So yeah, we can start looking at that. You know, you can look at that and what suggestions you have. Happy to hear them.
Awesome. So, Chris, there's another item here: impact of social distancing and quarantines. You want to go through this and then move forward? So far, what I've been doing is just making a notice of some of the implementations that may be relevant to the sub areas, and they're highlighted in green in the document. So if you have any, I mean, if you guys across the community have any other implementations that you feel may be pertinent, just list them there on the document as well. And again, feel free to jump in at any time to share your input and your perspective. So what's this impact of social distancing and quarantines talk about, Chris?
So I haven't fully fleshed this out, right? But it was just, I was thinking we could have had a discussion on, you know, the government has so under curfew, right? People have, I'm not sure if there's necessarily a stay-at-home order like there is over here, but I'm thinking people are working from home who can work from home. There are social distancing things. I know that you guys should have at least stopped mass gatherings. So I wouldn't expect for there to be clubs operational or places with more than, because I think in a building over here we can't have more than 15 people inside at a given time, or it's 20. Some of the start, and you know, all of these different orders and whereby we change the normal flow of things do have some form of societal effect, right? And I'm not necessarily we need to come up with a solution to solve it right off the bat. What I was just thinking about is, have we thought about what this is causing, right? What effect is this having? Well, you know, how is this affecting every single person on their own level? And I was just thinking, you know, you can probably start with a simple. Well, we kind of had it kind of on the survey of, you know, just the type of effects, but I'm not talking like economical stuff, but just on like a mental standpoint of just how people are adapted, right? How are you faced with this whole idea of, you know, you got to stay inside, self-quarantine yourself for 14 days.
Oh.
A personal effect on you in that. And, you know, I know, like, for instance, like New York's orders are kind of so strict, you can't go and see your parents, you know, there's video calls, right? If you're walking on the road, it can't be more than 2 people side by side. and stuff such as that. So I was just, I guess I
Yeah,
was.
that's true. Actually, India has a whole list. I can send it in the group and show you guys, like what you can and what you can't do. There's a big thing now in India for that.
Yes, I think I may have been bringing up that point just based on the measures that I know are being implemented over here. But
Mhm.
I was just thinking, there's some effect of whatever Guyana is
Right.
doing, even if our measures aren't so strict. I would think just from a social aspect, what implications
Yeah.
does this happen on
Got it. Got it.
yeah.
So right away, what I can do is ask Samantha. Samantha, are you there? There.
I'm here. I'm here.
Now, do you know what I'm about to ask you to speak about? Remember it's your final year project, right? But you
Yeah.
designed it. You designed it specifically for persons who needed help with depression and who
Yeah.
are prone to suicide.
Yes.
Can that particular model be retrofitted here to help persons deal with the depressing effects of the COVID shift, quarantining, etc.?
Yeah, that specific model could be used here, and also there could be more added to it. Actually, I'm working on something to put out there with respect to COVID-19 and mental health cases, because
Good.
looking at some of the statistics and what have been happening, and personally it happened to me when this whole disaster hit. So like for me it was a big eye opener, and the mental shift and some of the things that happen, I'm not aware that other people would be in such a place to pick themselves up and put themselves up in a place where they can find coping mechanism and all of that, right? So I'm working on something called Mind Hacker, and Mind Hacker is catering for shifting mindset, preparing coping mechanism, and helping people to basically look at how is it that they can survive this period mentally, because there's a great level of uncertainty, and obviously that comes with fear, anxiety, and you don't have no level of peace within, and you have to now look at strategies to create new skills, new mental coping skills, like more empathy, kindness, being compassionate, and having to use your mental faculties so as to keep yourself calm and relaxed through this period, because you not only have to be strong for yourself, you have to be strong for your family, you have to be strong for your community, you have to be strong for your country, because as a leader, there are many people that I'm connecting with, and there's a lot of breakdown, and that breakdown didn't happen just because COVID-19 happened. That breakdown happened because from the beginning, from the inception, our education system, our society, the systems that we're brought through did not prepare us to be this type of person that when something hit, you can just adapt. It's just hard to adapt. And I
Yeah.
think some of those skills I would have gotten from the computer science department when I was a student, and it helped me to maneuver almost quickly, because if I didn't, I would have find myself in a very, very dark place.
Mm.
So I can imagine what is happening, and that experience there's shocked me, it scared the hell out of me, and I'm still not over it, but I'm using strategies to help me, and I want to share those strategies, and I want to put those strategies out there so that the rest of the world could use it.
Awesome. Awesome. And I think, yeah, I didn't know you were working on this Mind Hacker project, but it seems like an ideal fit under the circumstances. And does it allow persons to receive remote counseling, for instance? Can we
Yeah,
connect,
I was just about to.
experts
Ye-
to, yeah.
yes, yes.
Awesome.
That was something that I worked on before, and I pull it off because it had some bugs. I'm not sure if you guys knew, sometime back I had launched an app that was doing online counseling and stuff. Yeah. So I
Hmm.
pull it back in just to make sure that this one that I'm going to create, that we don't have that amount of bugs and we had some challenges with Google updating their system and all of that. So I
Okay.
just wanted to put back something out there that would, respond to the challenges in these times.
Awesome.
So
Yep.
is actually under the Queen's Young Leaders Program.
Hmm.
They're actually giving support to it right now.
Hmm. So is MindHacker in a state to be shared with us right now, Samantha? Can you give us access to it? We can play around with it, or is it still under development?
It's still under development.
Okay. How soon do you foresee having something that we can interact with, so we can weigh in on, how to make it, how to streamline it and quicken its deployment?
Well, I'm looking at maybe in another month and a half.
That's gonna be a while. We may need it. We may need
Yeah.
it sooner. Yeah, but under the circumstances, the strength, the strength that of what we're building here is that you can leverage the community to quicken its
Yes.
deployment. So feel free to do that. If you need some additional hands on deck, then don't hesitate to let us know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there? Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just thinking, especially on the psychological standpoint. Like, I can speak personally. I'm not a person that goes out much myself, but like just
Ha.
yeah. Don't give me that right. Yeah.
Well done, Ellen. Well done. Well done. All I will say.
You beat us to the punch.
Well done.
In terms of me,
Julius?
okay. All right, guys. Let's start. In terms of me being over here as a student during my studies time, this may not replicate when I'm in Guyana, but over here, I don't go out much. I've probably been
There
out
you go.
twice in like a month and a half. Just hopping on like these calls and having these discussions, I appreciate it a lot more because at least you're hearing somebody in a sense. You spend a lot of time dabbling in your thoughts. So I'm even taking on even like a starting point, and Samantha can probably provide assistance with this just based off of the fact. Can we like just start like like what we do internally at V75 in terms of the tech talks and truth sessions, but like a community thing,
Yeah.
weekly tech community meetup or virtual, obviously, but or if we can just have a simple thing whereby I know a few people who are in the kind of the psychology field. Can we like have an index of these people are here willing to help? This is a page you can go to and just know how to contact them.
Yeah.
Just
And
really
building on that, Chris.
Mhm.
Building on that, and then weaving in a bit of simplicity.
Mhm.
Just being able to share and connect is tremendously helpful in times like these. So what I'm envisioning is that even without disclosing your identity, let's say that you just come to this connection of souls or connection of personalities, this virtual connection of personalities, and you get to talk about how COVID is affecting you with others, but you do it anonymously. That may present a very simple execution to assist in this, combating the ills, the psychological ills of the pandemic on us. So that might be something to think about while we wait on the full version of MindHacker to come about.
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely. We can put it. We can put it.
I'll take note of that.
What's that?
Oh, I was saying that I'm taking note of that.
Yeah, you could probably
Yeah.
put the MVP version, like a
Yeah.
simplified version,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
at least something for like a query version, like what kind of help you're looking for, not necessarily to connect or so.
Right. Right.
Uh-huh.
And people are very private
Like
here,
a way for people to
so
just reach out, like allow
exactly.
people to ask for help.
Okay.
And it'll be more inviting if you know that your identity isn't exposed. So you can just
Yeah.
you can just communicate, and it's just ideas and thoughts and whatnot. And if you want to disclose, the deepest, darkest, intimate things about yourself, you can do that without reservation of being judged because no one knows who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah, instead of creating a fake profile. And,
Yeah.
I think I had a lot of discussion around the same identity topic with disclosing information when I was doing like my final year project. And I remember we had this discussion too, Eldon. People had reservations in disclosing their identity about things that they were going through because of stigma and all of these things that arise as social issues that they're facing. And sometimes it makes it difficult when their identity is being known. And I can tell you that from experience, because there was something that was happening with me. And obviously, the person who was counseling me did not know it was me, because I didn't want them to know it was me, right?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
2 years after, we happened to sit on a panel, and then I was talking about some of the things I was doing and my story that I told her from the inception match. And then she was like, hey, are you this person? And then I was like, yes. So
Mm.
when you're in a session there with people, you feel vulnerable, and obviously sometimes you don't want them to know. So
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very important point.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we can look into that. Anyone has anything else that they might like to add to this point?
sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. And we've got a couple of other areas, but adapting to distancing and data sharing and accessibility. I know we've got some thoughts on data sharing and accessibility, but does anyone have anything additional to add to adapting to distancing so we can at least start the discourse and then continue it through Slack? So just to recap, so far we've had supporting distance education, making e-commerce accessible, and facilitating order fulfillment and at-home delivery. Yeah.
All right, I can just add on my experience with the social distancing. Um, this is my normal life.
Okay.
Nothing has absolutely changed. This is how I
Uh-huh.
grew up 30 years ago. Everything continues normally. However, I found that certain activities I had a need to continue. Positive activities like doing karaoke or just doing a video call with friends and talking, just being around a group of minds like this and having a conversation. I had need for those kind of activities. I also had need for like Toastmasters and everything. Why I bring that up is because I find that Zoom and video conferencing is a very useful tool. Though this one,
Mhm.
Gypsy, I saw what Joshua did with the classrooms and how he was able to incorporate it into another system and use all the features. Maybe
Mhm.
having an option where people can have like a meetup that would encourage virtual meetups versus being able to like having like a public room, like a private room where friends can just meet up, or you can have breakout sessions of not more than 5 people, random people, so then you feel comfortable enough to talk, but also uncomfortable enough where you get out of your comfort zone. Like some kind of chat or video or some kind of activity into the platform where you allow people to socialize and incorporate social distancing to a simplified version, by the way.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I mean,
As I say, I have karaoke sessions on Zoom.
yeah.
I've been using an app called Star
So
Maker.
more
I
so
tried to
that'll
brush up on my songs, some of Frank
gotcha.
Sinatra's and whatnot.
So that'll appeal to those who don't necessarily need group sessions, but just need social sessions, like you, Chris.
Huh?
That'll appeal to people who need social sessions, not necessarily group therapy sessions.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
Yeah.
virtual social sessions. Right?
No, it's a
Like
human
Chris
need.
came
It's a
up with this
human need.
brilliant thing what they called why did you call it quarantine? CORANTINE.
You call it
You call it a
Wow.
quarantine line, right? So like every second Friday we would have these quarantine lines where we connect on Google Meet and we play these virtual games and
I saw people host movies. Like one person stream their screen of a movie, and friends sit down and they home. You know,
Yeah, that's be cool.
Yeah.
like we can facilitate that. I mean, this gypsy looks like it can do some of these
I
things.
think
You know, if
just
we can have
if
something.
we can have, like, we're all giving like different accounts of what we do as, adoption methods, right? Can we have just like a public facing page of different ways? It could be a blog. It could be just some sort of public resource. Hey, this is how Ryan has shifted. This is how Samantha has shifted. And just share it as resources, and then we could from Nexus Hub we could drive some advertising behind it. Get that
That's
out
good.
there, and then
You could do
somebody.
it quarantine stories, something like that.
I would like if we could arrange. We have Mohammed here. We could arrange to have a video connected people, and they could give their stories, or we could play a fun game and just share it, and then have a nice little message attached to it.
Yeah, like trivia and stuff like that. It's fun. It's still fun activities, but
Yeah.
in a pseudo group.
yeah. Gotcha. It's already on the list.
All right, good.
Brilliant. All right. So I want to wrap this session up because we're pushing an hour and a half, and we don't want to stretch everyone out. So I think it's been a very fruitful session. We actually weren't expecting to have such an organically fruitful session, but it happened anyway. That's when you got that's when you got some. You just put the right minds and hearts together, and the magic happens.
Yeah.
So this is really refreshing, and let's continue our conversations in Slack. I think we've got a good fleshing out of the framework, particularly for the first major concern, which is protecting the vulnerable, and then we can continue on the others either later on this evening or tomorrow.
What time?
All right, guys.
What time would it be if it's later on this evening?
Good. So I'll take a consensus on this. Given that we push overtime about an hour, our next scheduled meet is at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So what say you?
We could do like 9.
You guys are okay with 9 p.m. to connect?
I kind of 9:30 or so.
No, that's too late.
That's too late. Okay.
Oh my God.
They're gonna push us into 12, and nah.
It's not like if you have a flight to catch, you have nowhere to go.
No, I got catch some Z's.
That could be delayed.
We want to be productive, Agri. We don't want to be a little thing. 9 is kind of late for some people too, so I suggest 9 or even 8:30. So that we hear what the group says, that we don't push our things.
Hey, let's do a poll. Let's do a poll.
You can do a poll one by one, like we did the other day. But you're not gonna be like Chris and skip Agri this time.
All right, yeah. Let's do a Slack poll, and then we decide when we meet up again later on this evening, and then we can continue the conversation. Sounds good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Albert, for facilitating me. Ciao.
Absolutely. All right.
See you guys.
See you later.